Hello, welcome to the Livestreams Karawara podcast. We're delighted to have you join us. We invite you to sit back, relax, and listen to our latest episode. Thanks for joining.
And it's great to be able to be here for a few weeks and be able to be here with you this evening. Now, it's widely known that Jesus enjoyed telling stories. But why was it that he so often spoke in parables and in stories and in those kind of things, in metaphors and in pictures? Well, the short answer offered us to the Bible, by the Bible, is that actually he was fulfilling Old Testament prophecy. Matthew 13:34 to 35 says, Jesus spoke these things to the crowd in parables. He did not say anything to them without using a parable. So was fulfilled what was spoken through the prophet. I will open my mouth in parables. I will utter things hidden since the creation of the world. He told stories because it was always intended that Jesus would be a storyteller. It was prophesied that he would be a storyteller. But there's more to the answer than simply that, isn't there? The region where Jesus lived and ministered was an overwhelmingly agricultural one. And I believe that he wanted people to be able to relate to his teaching. And therefore he used stories and pictures of things from their everyday lives. He used characters and images such as sowers and seed, wheat and weeds, vineyards and tenants, fig trees, shepherds and sheep, harvests, threshing floors and millstones. And I also believe that he wanted his teaching to be memorable and easily repeated. Sharing and retelling a story is far easier than retelling an instruction or a difficult to understand concept, because you actually need to understand it to be able to explain it to somebody else. But a story, you can quite easily retell that story, even if you don't understand the meaning behind it. Hey, do you know about this, that, and the other? I heard somebody tell this story. Let me tell you. And during the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus strung together a number of pictures, metaphors, and stories, along with some instruction in order to make his points. And these stories were highly relatable to those that he was talking to. They would have been situations that they would have recognized. Even funny little pictures that were memorable, like a man with a whole tree sticking out of his eye. It's a picture you're going to remember, you're going to repeat. They're things that people would have thought about in weeks to come, as they thought back to what it was he was saying that day on the hillside. They would have remembered some of those images, remembered some of those pictures, even days and weeks later. And we're going to look at a section of the Sermon on the Mount together this evening that takes two of those pictures, and we're going to explore what they mean together. But interestingly, they were easy for the people of the day to relate to. But the first of them, I don't actually think is that easy for all of us to relate to. So I'm going to need a little bit of help to explain the first image. So Mel, can I grab a microphone from you? And Regan, come up here, my friend.
Hello, hello.
Excellent. There you go. You can have that one. So people might not know who you are and your background. So just briefly, tell us, who are you and what do you do?
Okay, can you all hear me? Yeah. show of hands who do know what my profession is without saying it. I was more than I thought.
There you go.
I'm very surprised. I thought everybody, I don't know what he does. I'm a trade qualified butcher. I have been for, I'm now into my 37th year. Why so long, I don't know. Basically took it up because my brother was a butcher at the time, so I thought I'd, sort of follow his
His
footsteps.
lead. Yeah, cool. So it's, meat. You understand meat. That's good. That's helpful. I don't know what my mic's doing, but anyway, it might sound like a bit of a weird question, but how do you tell if a piece of meat is good or bad? And what does it matter anyway?
Firstly, you can tell by the colour of it.
Okay.
And also by the smell of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it changes colour and it starts to smell gross. Cool. Okay. And what would happen if you ate bad meat?
You could get pretty sick.
Okay.
It could kill you if you're not careful.
Okay. So you need to be careful with meat. Now, I realise that you may have walked the earth for a few years, but you weren't around in Jesus' time. But in today's world, we have fridges, we have freezers, we keep meat good so that we can eat it and it doesn't make us sick. What would they have done back then?
You're referring to, the preservation.
Okay.
I thought you were talking about the cured meat.
So how? But regardless, what do they use and how did they do it?
The origins of cured meat, they're not actually sure. But what I was told, this was back when I was doing my apprenticeship when I was at TAFE, that you've got to go back to about probably the 1600s with the wooden ships. Mm-hmm. The only way to go from one port to another. Mm-hmm. They used back then you just had sailing ships to move the produce, but the problem was with the meat, they weren't allowed to do live export. Mm-hmm. The British said, no, you can't do it. I don't know whether it was because the ships weren't equipped for it or maybe the cattle weren't going to survive the journey because they could be out there for months. So it had to be slaughtered before they took it anywhere. But like you said, they didn't have fridges, freezers, any way of keeping the meat cold. Good. Or to be so they decided. This is what I was told. This is I probably believe it. With the ships, they had wine barrels.
Okay.
Obviously, they used an empty one. They thought, right, how are we going to transport this meat? So they would fill the wine barrel up with water and put the salt in it because they knew the salt would keep the meat stop it from spoiling.
Okay.
And the salt they used back then was rock salt.
Okay.
And they're called salt corns, which that's how the name where you get the corned beef from. Nothing to do with the yellow vegetable
things on a stick of maize or whatever. Yeah. Okay.
So it's really cured beef or salted beef.
Okay. And that would have been the same, talking 1600s, that would have actually been the same way back in the ancient world as well. So to keep meat fresh back then, pack it with salt. Yeah. Rub salt all over it.
And it was basically ended up, it was just an accident that obviously it kept it from being spoiled, but also it gave the meat flavour as well. So when they cooked it, it had that nice salty flavour, and it was basically an accident.
Okay.
It was...
There you go. Yeah. That is how we ended up with corned beef. Thank you, my friend.
I was going to go a bit further. There's another story.
Yeah, go for it.
Well, in my first year of my apprenticeship, we used to have to do our own.
Okay.
Little bit different. We had a big, what we called a brine tank, which was like a baptism bath, but you wouldn't want to be thrown in it. It was in the corner of the fridge.
Yeah.
It had salt and it had water in it, and we used to put the meat in there. And after about 3 or 4 days, you'd have to fish it out again. But before you put it in there, we had a pumping tank, and it was like I wish I had the props here because this is one of my jobs. I used to enjoy doing it. It was this pumping tank, and it had this like a big long syringe and a trigger on it, and you would inject the needle, and it had all these little holes on it as well. You'd inject it into the silver side or the corn brisket, or this is when it was still just raw meat, and you'd pull the trigger, and this liquid, it's called injectamix, would fill up the piece of meat. It'd blow up like the Hulk. You go, when you and I used to love doing that, and then you would put it in the brine.
Okay.
But then after, say, 3 or 4 days, you'd have to fish it all out again, and the water was absolutely freezing. And as a first-year apprentice, that was your sort of job to do because, and believe me, pulling it out was, it was very, 5 seconds in there, and your hand was so cold that you couldn't see it. The water would go a little bit sort of brown in colour, but
amazing.
So, but now it comes already done. We don't do that anymore. So
shame.
That was
brilliant. Thank you, my friends.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Go and grab your seat.
Yep.
No worries. No worries. So, brines and salting, have that in mind as we read the passage from Matthew 5. So we're reading Matthew 5, 13 to 16. You are the salt of the earth. But if salt loses its saltiness, how can it be made salty again? It's no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled underfoot. You are the light of the world. A town built on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on its stand, and it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. Now, Jesus was partway through his sermon when he said these things. And in the moments before, he was talking to his followers about how they would be persecuted, but how they were to rejoice in their suffering. And then he changed tack to tell these two stories, to use these two illustrations. And notice how he starts that section. He did so by making an announcement, a pronouncement. You are the salt of the earth. It wasn't a statement of intent. It wasn't presented as an ambition or something he wanted his followers to aim for or to strive for. No, this is who they were. They are the salt of the earth. Followers of Jesus are the salt of the earth. But what did he mean? Well, think back to what Reagan just shared with us. How was salt used in the ancient world? It was a preservative. Its job and its role was to starve off and prevent decay in meat. And that is essentially what Jesus is explaining through this metaphor. If salt is no longer salty and therefore no longer preserves, then what's it good for? Not a lot, because salt needs to be salty. Now, interestingly, science would say that pure salt cannot lose its saltiness. However, the salt that they would have been using in that region at that time wouldn't have been pure salt. And over time, their salt would have lost its saltiness. It would have become no good for using to preserve. And all it should be used for was to be thrown away. And there's arguments to say the comment of being trampled underfoot was that actually there were uses for it to strengthen the roofs of their houses, which is their entertaining spaces back in the day. So it did get trampled underfoot. But it was not useful for its main intention, for keeping things preserved. Jesus' point was that for salt to be truly useful, it needed to be available to be a preservative. So, why did he call his followers the salt of the earth? Well, every follower of Jesus back then would have had some form of job or a family or friends or people they met with at a regular basis. And the majority, if not all of the people in front of Jesus listening to him would have been Jewish. Throughout the Old Testament, the Jews were God's chosen people. They were the ones who should have had a relationship with God. They were the ones whom the Messiah had been promised to and were waiting for his arrival. They were the ones that should have recognized Jesus when he came. And the ones that Jesus was talking to had done just that. But many of those they were interacting with during their week had not recognized who Jesus was. Their lives were heading for decay. And through the metaphor, Jesus was challenging his followers not to neglect those around them. These people were missing out on the truth of who Jesus is. And so it was their role as the salt of the earth to impact their community, to share Jesus with them, to preserve them so that their lives weren't riddled with bacteria and decay and ultimately sickness and death. And it's the same for us today. Each of us knows people, whether our families, our friends, our work colleagues, people we meet in our everyday lives, whose lives are full of decay. They don't know Jesus, they don't worship him, they don't live for his glory. And that's where salt is needed. That's where we need to be alive and active, speaking about Jesus to them, sharing our testimonies and our stories, living our lives for his honor and glory, so that they can come to know him too. You are salt. The question is, what do you taste like? Are you salty in the way you live your life and through the things that you say? Are you preserving the lives of others? Or are you pretty flavourless salt? Or worse, actually salt that's riddled with impurities and bacteria yourself? Just as I'm no butcher, I'm no scientist either. And so there's probably people here that could explain to you the properties of light far better than I can. However, I think light is pretty relatable to us all. I mean, when you walk into a dark room at night, what do? Turn on the light. When you drive your car at night, what do? Turn on the light. When you go camping, you take a number of things with you, but what do you take? A torch or a flashlight, absolutely. When you have a romantic meal, what do you light? Candles. You don't sit in the darkness and not see each other or not see what you're eating. Everyone gets what light does. It's a relatable thing. And just like salt, Jesus declared to his followers that they were light. Now, there's a subtle but important difference between these declarations. Jesus used the phrase salt of the earth, meaning salt in the earth or salt in the ground. However, the phrase light of the world is deliberately different. It means light within the world we live, light amongst humanity, light within society. Whereas the picture of salt is a static one, of it in the earth, the picture of light is full of movement as it goes into the world. And there's references throughout the Bible to Jesus being the light, for example, the true light, or the light of the world himself in John 8:12. But here in Matthew 5, he describes his followers as the light of the world. Why? To help them to understand why, he used two more fairly simple illustrations. First, a city on a hill. And it's said that ancient cities of the area would be either built from white limestone or washed with lime. So it wouldn't matter whether it was daytime or it was night. That city would be shining as the sun hit the white and you could see it, or at night as the lamps were lit. And likewise, lamps were lit in the home at night, and then, as he says, lifted onto lampstands, not shoved under a bowl and hidden. Jesus followed these pictures with an explanation to make it abundantly clear what he was talking about. Verse 16, in the same way, let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify the Father in heaven. And it's interesting to note what Jesus says being a light is like. It's simply doing good things. So does that mean being nice to people, not swearing, giving money to charity, generally being a decent person? Is that what it means to be light? Well, yes and no. Because Jesus goes on, and glorify your Father in heaven. Doing good things is nice. It's good. But good things doesn't just mean one or two nice things here or there, or one or two nice things in your day. It means living a life of sacrifice and worship, following God where he is leading, and being willing to die to yourself, to take up your cross, to live with compassion, with mercy, with grace and forgiveness. It means living out a true Christian life. As we referenced before, Jesus had just been talking about being persecuted for his sake. And he would go on in the next part of the sermon to say that he hadn't come to abolish the law, but to fulfill it, mentioning in verse 19 that whoever obeys the commands and teaches other people to obey them will be great in the kingdom of heaven. Good things don't just mean one or two actions, but a life obeying God and teaching others about him, so that they too will live a life that glorifies, worships, and ultimately lives for him themselves. As it was with being salt, so too being light is a challenge for us today. Think back to what I was saying a moment ago about the difference between those pronouncements, the salt of the earth and the light of the world. Salt has a stable, preserving nature, but light is full of movement and exploration. By using the term light of the world, Jesus was challenging his followers. Not only were they not to hide away and do the odd good thing here or there, but they were to be a visible presence in other people's lives, to make a real difference. Where? Throughout the whole world, in new places, wherever the darkness had taken over, they were to impact it with light. And there continues to be many dark corners in our world today. It's shocking the number of people who live in Perth today whose lives are full of darkness. People who don't know a Christian well enough to be able to observe the way that they live and say, I want that too. And as we know, if the numbers of people here in Perth are shocking, then the numbers of people in other parts of the world are astronomical. There are large areas in places like North Africa, the Middle East, India, China, other parts of Asia, to name but a few, where people don't just have not much chance, but basically no chance of ever witnessing how a Christian lives, how a true Christian life is to be lived out. There is a real need for Christ followers to be active, to be light in places like those. In a moment, we are going to go into a time of communion. And you might have realized that we hadn't done that yet today. We're doing it at the end of our service because we want to do it a little bit different. So once you've gone to one of the tables in a moment when they are there and you've grabbed your wafer and your juice, what I'd like you to do is to go and find one or two other people. Take a moment to remember Jesus, and I'll read a passage for us to help us to do that. But also take the time to consider that if he was willing to give up all that he did, then what would it take? What is he asking you to do to be truly salt in the situation you find yourself in today, with the people you encounter in your everyday life? But not just that, what would it take for you to be light and be willing to go to some of the dark places that he is leading you and to live a life of sacrifice and worship there? So once I've read this passage, take time, come and get your wafer, come and get your juice, come together and take time to contemplate, and then share with one another and pray for one another, and then take communion together as a statement of, we will do this. We will be salt and light. So let me read Philippians 2. Christ Jesus, who being in very nature God, did not consider equality with God something to be used for his own advantage. Rather, he made himself nothing, taking the very nature of a servant, being made in human likeness. And being found in appearance as a man, he humbled himself by becoming obedient to death, even death on a cross. Therefore, God exalted him to the highest place and gave him the name that is above every name, that at the name of Jesus every knee should bow in heaven and on earth and under the earth, and every tongue acknowledge that Christ Jesus is Lord, to the glory of God the Father.
We hope you enjoyed our latest episode. Tune in next week for another Life Streams Karawara message. Have a blessed week.